Peace River Westlock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, I asked the Minister of Canadian Heritage about what he was doing to prevent child sexual abuse material, CSAM, and videos of rape and sex trafficking from being uploaded and distributed on the internet. I also asked the same question of the Minister at the Ethics Committee just this week. The Minister's response is that he will be tabling someday an online harms bill that will include a 24-hour takedown requirement of the images, exploitations of images removed. He also claimed that the government doesn't have a magic wand to prevent exploitation from being uploaded. Mr. Speaker, I don't think the minister quite understands the gravity of the situation. And I was surprised that after months of hearing from survivors like Victoria Gailey, who shared their horrific experiences of online exploitation, the minister still hadn't seen any of their testimony. Many of them talked about how CSAM and non-consensual videos of them were put up, and overnight millions of views and had been downloaded thousands of times, creating an endless nightmare for these victims. They call for the companies to be required to verify age and consent of every individual depicted in the videos before it would be uploaded. Preventing this exploitative content from ever reaching the internet, it must be a priority for the government. On Monday, in response to an order paper question that I submitted, the RCMP revealed that CSAM reports from Canadian entities to the National Child Exploitation Coordination Centre has increased from just over 2,000 reports in 2015 to over 66,000 reports in 2020. That's a 2,700% increase in just 5 years. Reports from outside of Canada are also increasing drastically to over 35,000 in 2019, for a total of 100,000 reports to the RCMP in 2019. To be clear, these aren't just reports of child sexual abuse, these are just reports of child sexual abuse and don't include videos of rape or non-consent. But I also want to highlight the report released just yesterday from the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, or C3P, that reveal the urgent need for concrete action from the Canadian government to prevent videos of exploitation from ever reaching the internet. I also want to highlight the report released yesterday. First, I want to commend C3P for their incredible work through Project Arachnid, which is the global leader in the fight to scour the internet for CSAM and help victims get their abuse removed from the internet. There are a few key findings from the project's analysis of over 5.4 million verified CSAM issues. First, 48% of the content triggered for removal notification to an electronic service provider had been previously flagged, and some ESPs had the image recidivism rates of over 80%. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, a 24-hour takedown provision will only provide temporary respite for the many victims. Secondly, young victims are being left behind. It is much more difficult for them to remove their images, as it appears to be teenagers are unable to get their images removed. Third, contrary to the assumption, most CSAM is not on the dark web. The vast majority of it is on the clear web on platforms offered by MindGeek. That is why C3P makes a clear number of recommendations focusing on the tech industry to prevent CSAM and exploitative content from being uploaded in the first place. Impose a duty of care that is proportionate to the level of harm. Generate proactive content detection for platforms with user-generated content, and require platforms to establish age and consent before pornographic material is uploaded. I know the minister will want to talk about the 24-hour takedown and the funding for education, but this won't prevent the videos of CSAM and rape from being uploaded in the first place. Where is the plan to prevent the upload of this content in the first place? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his commitment to this issue and contributing to this important discussion. I'm happy to speak to the private member's bill, Bill C-302, Stopping Internet Sexual Exploitation Act, which was introduced by the member for Peace River Westlock. What C-302 proposes to do is amend the criminal code to create 2 new summary conviction offenses, Mr. Speaker, that would criminalize making, distributing, or advertising pornographic material for commercial purposes without first ascertaining that each person whose image is depicted in the material is 18 years of age or older and have given their written consent to their image being depicted. The bill would further authorize a court to make an order prohibiting an offender from using the internet or other digital network requiring the offender to ensure that the pornographic material at issue is no longer stored on or made available through the offender's computer system, and requiring the offender to remove the material at issue from the internet or other digital network.
As its short title suggests, this bill seeks to end sexual exploitation on the internet. I know we all agree that the criminal code must effectively criminalize all forms of sexual exploitation, especially when such offending involves making sexualized images of children and distributing those images through the internet. I am reassured that the criminal code already comprehensively criminalizes such conduct through its child pornography provisions, which define that term broadly to include all forms of child sexual abuse material.
Specifically, in the code already, Mr. Speaker, Section 163.1 prohibits making, distributing, and advertising child pornography and prevents an accused from advancing a defense of honest but mistaken belief that the victim was 18 years or older, unless they can point to some evidence indicating that they took reasonable steps to ascertain that the person depicted in the material is 18 years of age or older. Such offenses are punishable by significant penalties, in fact, penalties that are in excess of those proposed in the private member's bill, Bill C-302. Section 162.1 of the Code also prohibits already the non-consensual distribution of intimate images and authorizes courts to impose prohibition orders and warrants of seizure under Sections 162.2 and 164 to stop the dissemination of child pornography and non-consensual intimate images, including on the internet. Again, I thank the member opposite for his commitment to this issue. I appreciate that he was indicating that regulating the internet and the spaces online is important as our takedown provisions. But what I'm speaking about today is actually the criminal code provisions as they currently exist. We do look forward to, however, examining Bill C-302's proposed reforms in the context of the existing criminal law framework to examine its potential impact on an already robust existing legal regime. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Peace River Westlock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice for his presentation on Bill C-302. He has got a robust understanding of it. The one issue that I'm addressing tonight is around the 24-hour takedown for CSAM. That's the frustration, and I'm hoping that Bill C-302 will be the counter to that. I think a 24-hour takedown is important, but we need to prevent these images from showing up in the first place. So 302 would establish the requirement for companies to maintain records. It's basically a record keeping, and you'd be found guilty if you weren't keeping those records. It reverses the burden of proof from the RCMP or the police force from having to prove that the person is underage. It reverses that onus and places that onus on the host or the creator of that content to have to prove that they have a document that shows that the individuals depicted in the videos are of age and have given their consent. Offering a 24-hour takedown is like handing out a fire extinguisher to a neighborhood that has a bunch of arsonists running freely around. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the objectives that the member opposite is pursuing and his reference to the takedown component as well as Bill C-302. Again, we agree that the objective is laudable, specifically in the digital age when we've seen a proliferation of sexually exploitative conduct affected through the internet. We know that sexual exploitation, particularly when it implicates children, can destroy lives. It's precisely why the code's existing child pornography provisions prohibit a broad range of conduct, including the making, distributing, and advertising of child sexual abuse material, and courts can order the removal of such material from the internet. But I do look forward to further debate in this House and conversations with the member to help achieve the very important objective that he is targeting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.